Hola, vamos a discutir los mandatos, commands en español. So, first of all, grammatically, what is a command? It's the second half of a request sentence. Like, I want you to go to school. The go to school part is the command. In both languages, Inglés y Español, there are ways to say that politely and ways to say that a little bit more, less polite. The subject is always you. It can be you plural, like to a group of people, or it can be you singular, like just to one person. And a command can be positive, like do this, or it can be negative, don't do this. Okay, so we have to look at one grammar thing before we actually look at how we make our commands. The grammar thing we have to look at is the opposite form of a verb. We call that subjunctive. And we have to look at this to make commands, but we're also going to use this form in a lot of other sentences and a lot of other places in Spanish. So it's good to get our feet wet with it and start practicing using it now. When we make the opposite form of a verb, we keep in mind that verbs in Spanish will either end in an AR, an ER, or an IR. Okay? So the original form of the verb will end in an AR, ER, or IR. To create the opposite form, you use the yo form first. So the yo form of hablar is hablo. The yo form of hacer is hago. The yo form of tener is tengo. The yo form of querer is quiero. You'll go to that yo form so that it ends in O. Then you're going to replace that O with the opposite letter from the verb's original form. So if it's an ER or an IR verb, you're going to replace that O with an A. If it's an AR verb, you'll replace that O with an E and essentially make an opposite verb. I'll show you what I mean on this next slide. Hablar. It's an AR verb, meaning to speak. When you put it in yo form, you get hablo. Then you're going to replace that O with the opposite letter. So instead of using an A, like we would use in our normal Spanish pattern, like he speaks, she speaks, habla, we're going to use E. So the opposite form of hablar, or the subjunctive form of hablar, is hable. That also happens to be the polite command. So if you were talking to a tour guide on a trip in a Spanish-speaking country, you could say, hable me, speak to me, tell me about this thing, okay? Hable. The opposite form of hacer, the yo form of hacer, to do or to make, is hago. We would replace that O with an A, since this is an ER verb, so it would be the opposite thing. We would replace it with an A. And so the command form or the opposite form or the subjunctive form of hacer is haga. So that's do. Do this. So, if you're asking your tour guide, do something for me, a polite command would be haga esto por mí. Okay, so let's look at a chart and ignore this first step right here, this familiar command. We'll talk about that in just a second. To do the polite commands, someone that you're asking someone something that you may not know, you're going to use the opposite form. So tour guide, restaurant, shopkeeper, anything like that, you're going to use the opposite form of the word you're asking them to do. For a negative command, you're going to put a no in front of it. So no haga. And that tour guide is driving too fast in those mountains and you don't want to throw up, you can say, no haga esto, don't do that. Great. If you're talking to a group, like ustedes, like a whole group, and asking them to do something or not do something, then you would do the same thing. You'd use the opposite form, but with an N. So do this, hagan esto, telling your whole tour guide group that you're with, right? You're like, hey, do this for me. Get in a group so I can take a big photo. Hagan esto por mí. Hagan. Or don't do this. No hagan. So to make polite commands, whether to one person or to a group, we are going to use the opposite form of the verb. So a lot of your practice is going to be how to form that opposite form. Now, looking at the top layer, if you're just telling a friend to do something, That's a little bit easier when it's a positive command. So if I'm talking to you as my friend and I'm saying, read me this, all I have to do is use the present tense él, ella, usted form of the verb. If you remember, Spanish verbs create a pattern, right? The yo form has an O in it. The tú form has an S in it. The él, ella, usted form ends in that A or that E. The nosotros form ends in MOS. The ellos form, the they, ends in an N, and that pattern holds forever. So all you have to do to ask a friend to do something is just use the he or she form of the verb, no opposite necessary. So speak to me is just habla, okay? Or read to me, lee, or write to me, escribe, okay? When you're asking a friend to do something, you are literally just taking the S off the word. Okay? That's all you're doing is take the S off the normal word. Escríbeme, write to me. Léeme, read to me. Háblame, speak to me. All I've done is take the to form of the word and taken the S off. Or in other words, used the él or ella version of that word. Now, if you're telling a friend not to do something, we go back to using the opposite form with the S at the end. So don't speak to me. I'm studying right now. No hables. Okay. Don't read that to me. I'm busy. No leas. Don't write to me. Call me instead. Right? No escribas. Llama. So we will have some practice to work with all of this. But in general, anytime you're giving a command, you're using the opposite form of the verb. If it's to a group, you're going to throw an N at it. If it's telling a friend not to do something, you'll throw an S at it. And then if you're just talking to a friend, you're just going to take the S off the normal word. I know that's a lot. We will practice. There are some irregulars as well, words that don't really have an easy form to work with. Really, all we do to make those irregulars is shorten the word. So to tell a friend to do something is really easy. You either take the S off the original word or you shorten the word like altogether. So to tell a friend, ooh, tell me that secret, because decir means to say or to tell. Tell me that secret. Dime. Tell me. Dime. Tell a friend, hey, do this with me. Haz. Put that over there. Pon. Leave with me. Sal conmigo. Have patience with me. Ten paciencia conmigo. Come here. Ven. So if you're telling a friend to do something, you take the S off the word, or if it's one of these really common words, you just shorten the word altogether. Be kind. Sé simpático. And then ir is vete. Ooh, there's a song that's got a lot of vete in it, like go away, vete, to go. Maybe I'll use that in part of our practice, the vete. I'll write that down. So a lot of notes in just a minute, but very usable things. We'll do this example here. Hacer, to do or to make. So if I'm telling a friend to do something, hazlo. I just shorten the whole word. If I'm telling a friend not to do something, I go back to that opposite form and put an S on it. No hagas. A polite request, do this with me, haga. Don't do this with me, no haga. You can skip vosotros. To a group, do this with me, hagan. Or to a group, don't do this with me, no hagan. So lots of words, lots of ways to tell people what to do in Espanol. But it really comes down to use the opposite form of the verb unless you're just talking to a friend, and then just shorten the word. I think I've said that like 4 times, but it's because I'm trying to take all the notes and make it very accessible. Opposite form of the verb unless you're talking to a friend, and then you just shorten the verb. Okay, that's a crash course in mandatos, and I will be sending you some practice to go with it. Okay, adios.